Welcome back to the CM Morning Show, everyone. We are fast approaching the final hour of our program, and we want to share another discussion with you. Now, despite the challenges that are faced by those with disabilities, there have been significant strides made in recent years towards creating a more inclusive world.
Now, some of these changes include the development of new assistive technologies and growing awareness of the disability issues, one of which through a podcast. Let's have a listen to one.
Halo pendengar Overheard Difabel Podcast. Pertama-tama kita mau ucapin selamat datang di episode bayi baru lahir alias yang perdana dari kita. Selayaknya episode pertama, kita mau mengenalkan apa itu Overheard Difabel Podcast sebagai medium alternatif dari dan untuk teman-teman difabel yang kamu butuhkan dalam membedah isu-isu terkait dunia dan dinamika difabel dari sudut pandang teman-teman disabilitasnya secara langsung.
Now, what we just heard, that was Overheard Difabel, which is a podcast that provides content promoting disability rights in a more accessible world. And joining us today in our studio morning to talk about Overheard Difabel are Anggara Tegar and Irvandias Sanjaya, co-founder of Semua Tidak Berjarak or Setara. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, of course, we want to hear about the background story and, of course, about Overheard Difabel. You just told us previously it was just starting new,
Yes,
2023, so congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so tell us more about it.
So our podcast is actually, as you said, this is started recently, and it's actually also some kind of reflection of our vision as an organization. We wanted to create a platform for persons with disabilities, and that's also including myself as a person with disabilities, to share our stories, right? To share our personal stories that maybe not many people know.
Okay.
And I think there are a lot of interesting stories from our community, from our disabled community. And by doing that, we also hope to acknowledge the general public about the things or the reality that we, persons with disabilities, often face on our daily basis. And so also that became one of the things that to drive us to create this podcast. And I think I'm going to give you one example of the things. So persons with disabilities often face with, I'd say, discriminations or maybe some kind of stereotypes and equality in a lot of aspects, right? And that's also including or frankly happened in our educational system, because according to the data from Badan Pusat Statistik from 2020 to 2022, the gap in education in Indonesia is actually quite high between persons with disabilities and the non-PWD. Like around 29% or so, persons with disability have less chance or even access to higher education, right? So like university and etc. So that became one of the things that persons with disabilities often talk within each other, within themselves, among our communities. And because there are not many platforms for them to share their stories, so we often meet people that feel like their voices are being unheard.
Correct.
And so with this podcast, we wanted to create a platform so that their voices are being heard, or even better, being overheard, right? Being overheard so that people could know more about the stories or even their struggles that they face on a daily basis. And hopefully, we could fight together all those negative things that happen.
That's the name, Overheard.
Indeed. It's a very unique topic for a podcast, something that I've never come across before in all the times on all the hundreds and thousands of podcasts out there. So obviously, this is quite segmented. However, even though it's this segmented, I imagine there's just so many different topics to cover. There's people with different disabilities, and each disability, I believe, has a different challenge that they encounter. So how do you go about curating your content and deciding these are the topics we need to talk about, this is what's important for us right now?
So, for example, like we are knowing that there are like people hard of hearing, or in Indonesia we call it as a teman tuli, and we understand that podcast has its own limitation. For example, that we are not enabled to make it closed caption, so people with the hard of hearing can understand the context on. For us, me and Angga and other friends are telling to the podcast, but we are just like a baby born. We just launched it, and we know that more iteration to come, including that we are enabling to make an installment, so everyone has its own access, regardless they are disability in a physical, in mental or everything that we are trying to emphasize even more in the near future.
Okay, so I would like to talk a little bit in regards to how you, basically this is something that is, for me, I moved to Indonesia in 2001, and I tell people all the time that, man, in 2001, they didn't have things like even disabled parking or wheelchair ramps or bathrooms in malls that were accessible. And things have changed so much over the last 20 years that I've been here, but I still think there's a long way to go. Can you give us obviously you felt there was a need to have your voices heard in regards to this particular topic. Can you tell us a little bit about where we stand right now? Where do you feel that we stand in Indonesia? Obviously, from an educational standpoint, we're still lagging quite far behind. But overall, where do we stand in regards to recognizing disabilities and being able to go forward and having a world that's more inclusive here in the country?
So maybe I could say that it's better than maybe 2001 when you first come to Indonesia, but obviously there's still a long way to go because often people are not quite know or got information about the disability community. So I think we can do that by doing in the media, right? So because before, from what we know, the education about the disability community is just not
very little. I can't find any
little
information
and not
about it.
With our today's theme or genre, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
Right now, the internet users are Gen Z, and we know Gen Z are really specific on contents that they want to see, right? So we try to provide the up-to-date, the newest content about disability to their TV or whatever, so we can have better information about
and to understand it also. And like in regards to what you mentioned also, Paul, and also Irfan and Angga, I think we've seen a lot right now where the culture is also shifted. We've seen a lot of cafes where it's, it's very adaptable for the hearing impairment and whatnot. We see there's a lot of lines right now where we're making it, or even the government or the people itself making it more accessible. Now, but listening to your own story, that's a different picture because sometimes people would picture other people's journey, right?
Yes.
How easy or maybe a challenge for you to have our friends from the disabled community to open up? Because sometimes they're very reluctant, and we also have these kind of manners, the Indonesian manners where they don't talk as much, or maybe they're not used to it because usually we're not heard, but now we want to overhear, or you're trying to overheard them to the people.
That's actually also one of the things that we often talk within our community, like how can we disclose ourselves to the outside world, right? Because we believe once we have the disclosure or body acceptance, self-acceptance, we could start to opening ourselves to the world, and that's really important for disabled community because often, and myself including when I was a teenager, I felt that when I hide, I'm not gonna grow.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, as you said, it's really important for us to have those disclosures so that public can see us, and then maybe before they have those stereotypes, because simply they cannot see us, right? And when we could show ourselves of what we can do and what we can achieve, and I think those stereotypes can then eliminate and start to shift it to become maybe positive stereotypes or something like that.
Yeah. So you've done 3-4 episodes so far.
Yes.
You said that you've gotten pretty good feedback so far as well.
Yes.
What have you learned in this early days so far of the podcast in regards to putting your content out there and how it's received?
Okay.
So before we launched the first episode, we done some research, and we found out that disability itself for some people are still considered as a rigid and a formal topics.
Okay.
So we want to change the paradigm by giving a context that, like for example, our target market is Gen Z millennials, and based on our research as well, that almost 70% of the podcast listeners, especially in Indonesia, are coming from the Gen Z itself. So since we know that the topic should be carried over the next generation, that's why we're trying to make it more relevant with the contextual of people with disabilities and all the topics. For example, Angga, Tio, Fena, and also Indra, our co-founders as well, to be get heard by people that are still young, are still in high school, junior high school, to get exposed with all everything that Angga and everyone's in here get exposed with every bad or even good experience
And
they have.
how do you do that? Like, do you make the obrolan, the conversation a bit lighter and a bit more, kind of so it's easier to ingest? Because you did mention, if people look at it as a rigid topic,
Or
they're like,
sensitive, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
they don't want to,
definitely.
they don't want to respond.
Yeah.
Is that how you instigate kind of feedback and interaction as well?
Maybe as a disclaimer, since all of us have been college friends since 2017,
nice.
so it's become more easier for me,
Right.
Angga, to get a collaborate, even like make a laugh between each other. So
Right.
we don't have any kind of hard feelings,
Okay.
even though we are
We
making
take it as a joke, actually.
Yes. And that's became a list of priorities because some of the non-disability person that we met, they also facing a challenge that they don't know how to get a close friends with
Don't know
people
how
with
to approach
disabilities.
it. Exactly.
Yes, that's exactly. That's why I'm trying to make the conversation become more light,
Yes.
so people can now understand. Oh, if we want to make a friend with people with the physical disability, that's the best approach to get into them, as well as with the hard of hearing, as well as the our friends from the deaf itself.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
if you have a disability, I mean, nobody has a disability but a sense of humor. Like everyone.
Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah, thank you for that, by the way, because again, here, Indonesia is very sensitive, right? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe other parts
understandably
of the
so.
country where it's more acceptance, but I think we need to, adapt to that new kind of a new stage. Now, in regards to, I think podcast is such a brilliant idea, guys, because it's not only for the people in the big cities where maybe it becomes more the norm, but maybe other parts of Indonesia that's more in the rural areas, it's still very hard. I mean, we've also catered stories where, we have the disabled community that it's still being treated like the way 30 years ago or 50 years ago. So if these young generation would listen, especially from the disabled community, this would really kind of amplify their confidence to actually grow their community and grow themselves. Now, in regards to that, is there something like for your podcast, are you going to invite also guests not only from the community, but let's say from the government official, if you're going to talk about, laws and whatnot, especially for your community, is that something that's also in your agenda and plans?
So we understand that in order to increase the awareness of people in public in general about the people with disabilities issue and inclusiveness in general, we know we have 5 stakeholders: academic, business, government, community, and media. So we are planning to invite as well someone from all the from the stakeholders to get invited to share their perspective. Also, we know that we cannot alone we cannot alone defending our dignity, our values by not involving others' agenda. For example, the government, as the regulator, they know how to make a good regulation. So we would like to invite more people to come in the near future.
Yes.
So on that note then, what are you guys hoping to achieve in regards to making an impact? You've mentioned a lot of very important points that I think need to be addressed. A podcast is not just a medium for example, if your topic is about disabilities, it's not just for the disabled, but obviously for everyone.
Yes.
Because as you mentioned, the awareness has to be spread. But what are you hoping to achieve in the long run? What's your long game?
So simple, we want to raise awareness, right? We want to raise awareness and educate the public of what we by we I mean a person with disability can achieve, right? So we also want to, as I said before, erase all the stereotypes, negative stereotypes that happen toward us, so that hopefully in the future, a person with disabilities can being seen as sorry for saying this, but normal society, right? Because we still have those negative stereotypes. So hopefully in the future, no more hiding for people with disabilities, no more indisclosure or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, with this podcast, we hope to bring that to the public.
And I hope that sincerely a lot of those changes take place. For example, I have a family member who is hearing impaired, and closed captioning is something that is so common. Like you watch TV back in the early 2000s, it was already closed captioned everywhere, but here it's still very difficult to access, considering all the different platforms and media that we do have, right?
And even now, I think in the modern world, like let's say Rihanna, during the halftime of the Super Bowl, she have the sign language lady who did it, and she became so famous because of it, and we need to have more of those kind of engagement.
We need more of those.
Yes. And definitely we do hope that you become the voice of the community, Overheard Difabel, and also Satara. So thank you for what you guys are done.
Oh, I got a good idea for guests.
Yes.
The Paris Sea Games are are coming up. You know, we have amazing like para sea games para athletes from here in Indonesia. So there you go, guys. I've just given you guys a guest lineup.
That's a good idea. Maybe we can
suggestion.
It's coming soon. That's why, right? Indeed. So again, good luck, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing and continued success for you this year and onwards as well.
Thank you very much, Irfan and Anggara. All right, guys, we're up for another short break right here. In the meantime, don't forget to follow our social media accounts. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and also YouTube at See Today News. We'll be right back.